Welcome back, folks. We're now joined by Dave Bond, the CEO of OCPA Impact. Of course, Dave, you were with us last week. We appreciate you coming back. Last week we talked about how session ended, what the top issues were, and kind of what came into the budget deal.
Right.
Let's talk about moving forward now. You just heard Representative Tom Newell discuss some of the issues in this process that were held over and may come up next year, may go to our own studies. What do you anticipate will be a political focus and discussion through the fall this year going into next year?
You know, after last year's elections, when we were visiting with the newly elected lawmakers, the one issue every single one of them were hearing about actually wasn't Medicaid and their local hospital, it was actually teacher pay. And so I expect you'll hear quite a bit about that over the next 7 months or so going into session. Probably a lot of the conversations will take that direction. A lot of lawmakers want to see an increase. They got a flat appropriation, they got some money out of the rainy day fund, but their overall money didn't go up. And so I think you'll see some of that being discussed. And maybe administrative savings within public education. How do we steer more of that money to the classroom, to teacher pay, to places like that instead of overhead?
Well, if people are hearing about those issues or anything else and they want to get involved, I mean, you help a lot of Oklahomans engage with their legislators and these issues. What do people do?
Right, so our organization is an advocacy group. We lobby directly at the Capitol. We have that distinction, but we lobby on behalf of free enterprise issues, limited state government, individual opportunity. So, you know, during session, we're at the Capitol every day. When we're out of session, when the legislature's out of session, we're around the state a lot, trying to stoke conversations in certain legislative districts all over Oklahoma, quite a few actually, the metro areas, the rural areas, mid-tier cities around the state, making sure there's conversations going on in those communities about parental choice in education, free market education, about making Oklahoma more competitive to lure jobs and business and opportunity here, whether it's on the income tax or rural opportunity zones, which is a big deal that they've got in Kansas now and Texas, in essence, that we're trying to get put in place here in Oklahoma. And then just, you know, state government spending. The budget grew this last year. There was kind of some different things going on there at the end, but the budget grew. And do we want more of that, or do we, as folks are getting laid off in the energy fields, do we want, you know, government spending to come down at the same time?
So you're mentioning some of these key issues here that you work on and that are discussions at the Capitol, and this show is all about how folks can be involved this summer and this fall and the avenues for which they can engage the process. So if someone just heard what you said and said, yeah, I want to work with Dave, I want to help him, that's important to me, what do they do? How can they get involved with your organization?
Well, thank you for that opportunity for a shameless plug. Our website is OCPA Impact. OCPAimpact.com. We've got opportunities on there in particular to sign up to get alerts from our organization during the legislative session, because a lot of folks don't know when are the bills coming up for a key vote, when is the pressure being put on their state legislator by a tax-consuming interest group to shift them one way to grow government. How do we shift them to go the other way, to shrink the size of government, increase individual opportunity? That's what we try to facilitate with taxpayers across the state. Put taxpayers in touch with their legislator at the opportune times, both in the state house and state senate, so they feel that backup when they go to cast that tough vote.
So we've talked a little bit about the possibility of a special session. I mean, do you, as a free market advocate, do you want a special session? Do you not want a special session? I mean, do you have a recommendation for, I think a lot of folks out there are saying, well, I'd like my roads to be fixed. I don't want taxes to go up. I mean, is there a sort of conservative free market position on whether or not to have a special session?
In years past, when there's been a budget flare-up that maybe wasn't anticipated by the legislature before session let out, usually the money is spent and then they come back either late in the year or at the beginning of the next legislative session, do a supplemental appropriation to patch the holes where they need to. That's fairly common. Usually they just come back into special session for a policy issue that there's just kind of a dilemma. A year or so ago, it was when the Supreme Court threw out the tort reform law that had been passed a few years prior, so all of a sudden folks operating in Oklahoma's legal climate were in limbo, and so they came back to make that more clear. The budgetary stuff, not as common.
So there were issues this year that dealt with education, healthcare, tax policy or economic policy that were moving through the process and then they were held over. You mentioned a second ago you anticipate the issue of teacher pay could be a big topic in the administrative function in education. What are some of those issues specifically that went through the legislature this year that were held over that you know for sure will come up next session that our viewers might have thought ended this past session, but now they're going to have a new opportunity that they might want to know to be involved this summer or to contact their lawmaker about?
I think for Oklahomans, taxpayers in particular, who want to see, you know, if we're going to set aside $10 10 grand for a child to be educated in the state of Oklahoma. That's the rough average. Then how do we put that money to best use to ensure as best we can that they're going to get a quality education? Parental choice is something that we push for each year. Education savings accounts is a new program that several states around the country are doing. Nevada just signed it into law just the other day. And that's something we pushed this past spring. We'll push again next spring. The budget chairman in the Senate's the author of that, so he's invested in that. He's term limiting out, so hopefully we'll make some progress there. And then also rural opportunity zones. You know, we got a lot of counties outside of Oklahoma City and Tulsa that are losing population. In Kansas, those counties allow folks to move in and pay no state income tax for 5 years. Well, there's a bill right now. It's actually the floor leader in the Senate. It's his bill, so perhaps some extra momentum there. That's still very much alive for the upcoming session. We'll be pushing both of those again.
Right. So, I mean, again, for people, I mean, there are these interim studies, there are things going on in the summer. This is not a time to tune out as a citizen and just wait for things to start up again next February.
No, you're more likely, you know, this time of year to see your legislator back in the district, especially if you're outside of Oklahoma City and Tulsa, and remind them of what you as a taxpayer want to see them make a priority the next spring. I mean, that's your best chance to really impress upon them what they need to be focused on.
Dave, thank you so much for being
Thanks,
here today.
gentlemen.
Good luck this summer. And
Thanks a
again,
lot.
that was OCPAimpact.com.
Absolutely.
Folks
Thank
wanna
you,
get
sir.
involved. Well, folks, we've got a couple announcements you don't want to miss when we come right back after this.